There's no one right way to hold land and one absolutely best or worst way to hold land. I think it's really important for us to both look at the cultural context that we're talking about in terms of who has historically had access to land and who has not, and then to be looking at what are the right options for us as people who are communitarians or potential communitarians and wanting to hold land. One of them is a tenants in common. In California, if there's more than one person on a deed, that's presumed to be tenants in common. Another one is joint tenancy, also sort of an older legal framework. There's LLCs, which are limited liability companies. There's other corporations, other corporate entities that can hold land, S Corps and C Corps. Now there's also B Corps, which is a whole sort of different overlay. There's co-housing. There's other ways that are similar to co-housing that might be like a homeowners association, where there are some collective rights that are held for a particular piece of land. Then there are ways of land being held that are not necessarily as rooted in the individual land ownership style of land as commodity, and those would be community land trusts and other nonprofit entities owning land. When we're deciding on what model best to use, which model to use that will best serve our particular situation, there are a number of things to consider. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. These are just some things to start thinking about as we're moving into this process. A big one is sort of what are the goals of the group? Oftentimes, as we'll get into, especially when we're looking at land as an investment in our future and our family's legacy, the preservation and or the increase in the equity that people hold in land is often a very important factor that's driving it. But sort of on the other end of the spectrum, there can be, and is increasingly a goal that is present in a group, about the transition of all or some of the value of that land being moved out of the speculative market. And that's also important to be considered. And then another goal is inclusivity, about who do we want to make sure has a place in our communities so that we're not completely homogenous as many times they have been in the past. Also really important, so that's if we're looking at the goals of the whole group, but it's also really important to think about the capacity of the members of that group and what they have to bring to the table. Financial capacity is often a very driving factor for what a group is going to choose. What else do people have to contribute towards the group? Maybe it's sweat equity, other skills, maybe they have real property or other tangible property to contribute. And then lastly, I think individuals' comfort and capacity of living, of group living and decision making. And I think it's really important, and I talk with a lot of clients about this point. I think there's two selves of ours that we have to look at when we're moving into community projects. There's our aspirational self, which is where we would like to see ourselves, where we would like to be, and then there's where we are right now. And I think that it's important to, if not align, to be aware of the discrepancy between those two parts. I have worked with a lot of people who go into community projects with this notion of, I want to share everything I have. I want to have every decision be made by consensus. I want to be collective with everything that we do. And for most of us, we are coming from a very hyper-individualistic society where it is challenging to relinquish that much of our individual control to a group structure. So I think it's important that we both have the North Star of where we'd like to be, and we be aspirational in that way in what models we pick, but we also don't pick a model that is so far away from where we actually are that we can't really live by those values that we're ascribing to. So I think that all of those factors influence which model we're going to end up with in a community.